Welcome to 2A Cops, Cops Supporting Gun Rights. My name is Keith. I have a great guest today. Everybody's talking about New Mexico and the governor in New Mexico and just the stunt that she's pulling with the Second Amendment. I have Daniel Carr, who is an executive board member on the Albuquerque Police Officers Association. So he is a police officer. He represents Albuquerque Police Officers Association in matters involving their cops. And he has got the 411 on what cops think on the ground down in Albuquerque. Daniel, thanks for coming, buddy.
Thank you so much for having me. It's an honor to be here.
Awesome. Hey, real down and dirty. What are the cops thinking about what the New Mexico governor's doing?
So the best thing that I can say about this, the most accurate thing I can say about this is that the cops on the ground are not for this, because this order has a couple things. It has the unique qualities of being both ineffective when it comes to crime control, and also it violates constitutional rights, and that is how police officers in New Mexico on the ground feel about this.
Awesome. And Daniel would know about it being unconstitutional because you just happen to have a law degree too. So there are a few cops out there with law degrees. He's one of them. I think you're going to be seeing a lot of Daniel soon. All right. So Daniel, let's go back for a minute. Why did the governor do this to begin with? What's happening on the ground in Albuquerque that she freaked out and basically caused these Second Amendment issues?
So our governor is Michelle Lujan Grisham. And in the past, just to back up just a little bit, in the past, she has talked about emergency health orders and the different use of those particular orders. She used those orders during COVID. She talked about how we might be able to use these orders from the government when it comes to poverty and when it comes to climate control. Well, in this particular instance, she decided to use an emergency public health order in order to go after the Second Amendment. And there were a couple of incidents that she cited of why she did this exactly right now. So in the last couple weeks in Albuquerque, we did have two different children, an 11-year-old who did die in a road rage incident when they were leaving a minor league baseball game. And there was a road rage incident and someone from a vehicle shot into the vehicle. And unfortunately and tragically, the 11-year-old died. And then there was also another child who did die in gun violence in northern New Mexico. And both of those happened within the last couple weeks. And those are the two incidents that were cited by the governor of why she did this emergency public health order.
Okay, so I have family in Albuquerque, so I've been there quite a bit. And it seems like there's a lot of violence anyways. I mean, not to diminish the harm that occurred in those particular cases, but it's not like murder is an uncommon thing inside of Albuquerque. Why all of a sudden go after the Second Amendment? It seems to me as an outsider looking in, this is more of one of those things of like, we're just going to use this as an excuse to go forth with an agenda. Is that what's going on, do you think? Or do you think it might be something else?
I think it's more to go forward with an agenda, just like you just stated. The reason is, and you are correct about Albuquerque being a violent city. So Albuquerque is usually in the top 10 when it comes to violence in all the different cities in the country. However, if you look at the homicide rate in the city of Albuquerque from this year compared to last year, and I did look at those numbers to see if maybe there was something that I was missing, we are actually have less homicides this year at this point than we had last year in the city of Albuquerque. And I think it's important to note that this emergency health order from the governor, it actually is, even though she's the governor of the state, it actually only applies to Bernalillo County, which is the county where Albuquerque sits. So it's not for the rest of the state. It's only for the city of Albuquerque, essentially.
One of the things we see that's common with politicians is they'll come out, make an order, and then say, and the police are going to take action if you don't comply. And I know, I'm sure it's the same way for you guys, but coming from the San Francisco Bay Area, I would sit watching the news going like, we're not going to do that. I mean, like, why are you saying we're going to, they're basically throwing us under the bus saying, oh, the cops are going to go get you. And we're sitting in our homes or in a briefing room going like, yeah, we're not doing that. When this first came out, what was the reaction from the cops there? What were they coming out saying?
So as you know, when it comes to just how police officers and police departments are structured, we have the managerial class, essentially the politicians who run police departments, and then the people on the ground, the officers who are taking calls for service. And a lot of times, what those individuals think or how they act might be a little bit different. However, in this case, everyone was pretty much on the same page. because as the governor gave the order and went on, did her public statement, gave the order, she essentially said, as she was giving the order, that the Albuquerque Police Department and the Bernalillo County Sheriff's Office and the district attorney in Bernalillo County, that she specifically said they may feel differently about the Second Amendment part of this particular health order. So as she was giving her order, she pretty much said that she didn't expect local police officers to follow these orders or enforce these orders, because it seems like she did have some type of meeting, at least in some respect, with some of the different public safety leaders in the area.
Yeah, I can't see any. There's a lot of bad public safety leaders out there. I can't even see a really bad one looking at this saying, that's a good idea. I think we should go out and start citing people. With that said, is it pretty much, was Albuquerque PD given any orders like, hey, don't enforce this? Or how did they address it as a department?
This was addressed as a police, and just to back up real quick, what's also interesting is that, so our governor is a Democrat. All of the different police leaders and prosecutors that I'm going to talk about here in a second, they're all Democrats. So they're all within the same party. The mayor of Albuquerque, the police chief of Albuquerque, the Bernalillo County sheriff, the DA, even the New Mexico attorney general. He was a George Soros appointed attorney. He was a George Soros appointed district attorney. And even he came out and said that the attorney general's office is not going to represent the state of New Mexico in this particular fight.
Interesting, because I had a George Soros-backed DA as well. And you guys have heard me rail against her in the past. I don't think people in the audience that aren't law enforcement, I don't think I don't think there's any way for us to overemphasize how bad a George Soros DA is. I mean, these are people that are like San Francisco, Oakland, LA, those types of areas have George Soros DA. So for them to come out and say this is a dumb idea, is pretty, it shows you how dumb that idea is. I don't know if you can get into this or not, but so some of the cops, like when some of those gun control measures have come out in the past, when we're sitting in briefing and we're talking about what new law was passed, and some of the guttural reactions from cops in briefing is just like, that's bullshit. I'm not doing that. I mean, was there some of that going on at Albuquerque or Bernalillo County when that order came out?
Yes, so there absolutely was. So there is no situation of any of the dozens of police officers that I've personally spoken to who were for this. Everyone was against this. Everyone said that this is bullshit, essentially that this isn't constitutional. And what I think is most important to say about this is, again, I am on the executive board of the Albuquerque Police Officers Association. Essentially, this is the union that represents police officers. And where I really think that our union did the absolute right thing is because even before the public statement from the mayor, from the police chief, from the DA, so really before we got any of those, really an indication of where any of those really our bosses, our public safety leaders were going to go, the Albuquerque Police Officers Association, they wrote an open letter to all the media and basically let them know that the Albuquerque Police Officers Association is not for this, and we view this as a violation of the Constitution, and we don't think that the police officers should be put in a position to where they are being forced to enforce this.
Okay, so if I'm a visitor, if I'm coming to Albuquerque for some reason, with the crime rate that it is in Albuquerque being it is, if I'm lawfully allowed to carry concealed, do you think it's a smart idea to not conceal carry if you can and you're in Albuquerque, if you're lawfully allowed?
So I'm going to answer that a couple different ways. The first way is Albuquerque is a high crime city, just like a lot of other big cities. And I do think it's important and it's reasonable for people who are safe with firearms to protect themselves in whatever way that they see necessary within the law. I should also say that besides the Albuquerque Police Officers Association and all of the different public safety leaders that I just mentioned who refused to enforce and prosecute the civil order, besides that, there were 6 different lawsuits that were filed against the governor, essentially trying to stop this order from her. It did go in front of a federal judge this afternoon, and the federal judge ruled, it did grant a temporary restraining order, essentially saying that the order from the governor, when it comes to 2 different sections of this, is not constitutional, and it granted the restraining order. So at least for now, this order from the governor is suspended. On October 3rd, it is going to go for a longer hearing. But to answer your question, if you are coming to Albuquerque, at least from now through October 3rd, those portions that really we are all concerned with, citizens and police officers, those have been suspended. Concealed carry, open carry here if you are lawfully allowed to do so.
So how many? So let me back up. Is it if I know you guys aren't going to enforce it, but if you did, is it an arrest? Is it just a ticket? Like what's the penalty for that order that she put out?
So the penalty is it's a civil order, and the maximum penalty is a $5,000 fine.
Is that so? Is it like a Muni Code violation? Like, is it an arrestable offense? Is it just something you can only issue a citation to, or how like? Because when I read it, I don't know anything about New Mexico law, but when I read it, I looked at it like a Muni Code violation where, oh, it's like a ticket, which none of us would issue, but like that would be the worst. Or is it indeed an arrestable offense for you guys?
So at least from my perspective, I don't think that it's an arrestable offense. But again, I'm saying that because pretty much almost right away, within a couple hours, our police leaders and our district attorney came out and said that we are not going to enforce this. But looking at what it is, just like you did, what I was able to read and find is that it looks like the penalty would be a $5,000 fine. I don't think it is an arrestable offense. But who knows what may happen if a police officer actually did try to go and enforce this and someone resisted or something.
And I don't think the general public realizes how often our politicians pass some kind of a law that is unconstitutional to where the cops are like, yeah, we're not doing that because it's unconstitutional. And for me, I remember I did a video on this once before. My city council passed a city code. They came out and said you can only practice free speech in groups of 3 or more if you do it at this park between 6 and 8 on Wednesdays. And we all laughed when it came out. We're like, you got to be kidding me. And it was over like some protesting stuff going on. And I was like, you got to be kidding me. And we're like, of course, like nobody's going to enforce it. You know, I mean, like nobody's going to do anything. We just laughed and like went about our day and just ignored it. And it was the rest of the public was upset. And they're like, the cops can't come get us. It's like, we never planned to. Like we ignored it and we thought it was as stupid as you do. And I kind of get the feeling this whole governor mandate, I could picture your briefing room right now of what it looked like, you know, when that came out. What's the one thing you want to tell people generally that hear about this mandate? I know it's been suspended and everything, but a lot of people, one of the things that's going to come out is people in the comments are going to say, you're going to do whatever it takes to save your pension. And I don't think people realize, they must think we're like millionaires with these pensions. I don't think they realize like what that pension really equates to. But is there something you can address to those people, to, you know, people have those questions and are still concerned about that?
Yeah, what I can say about that is obviously none of us want anything like this to happen. We don't want any governor or any elected official to do any kind of these public health orders. But when something like this does happen, it really is an interesting sociological experiment to see how do public officials, how do police officers, how do they actually act when people from the government, when people who are in charge of the government are giving them orders to obviously violate constitutional rights. And in this instance, again, before any city leaders or district attorneys came out against this, the group that represents the Albuquerque police officers, that elected group came out forcefully and said this is not constitutional. We should not be forcing police officers to enforce this mandate. And I think that's the most important thing to remember, that again, without any prompting, really at risk of being at odds with the people who run the city, again, with the people who pay our paychecks, the Albuquerque Police Officers Association immediately set out a memo that went out to all the media of what we think about this order and that we do not think that it's constitutional. And again, it's hard to predict exactly what police officers are going to do in every situation, but here's what the officers of the Albuquerque Police Department did in this situation. It was the right thing to do. And really, this is a model of how all police departments, how all police officers, all police unions should act when this happens again, because this will happen again somewhere else.
A lot of people bash police unions, but I don't think they realize how important police unions are, because your general cop on the street can't speak out. Like, I can speak out because I'm retired. You can speak out because you're on the board of directors for the Albuquerque Police Officers Association, so you can say something. And I don't think people understand how important that is. And for the for the Police Officers Association, that union, to come out so forcefully, it was because they were directed by the members to say something. And it's your ability, being on that board, to come up even today, to be on here and not get in trouble and be able to say, hey, this is what we think. I think people need to realize how important those unions are.
Absolutely. The executive board members of the Albuquerque Police Officers Association, there have almost never been as many calls and text messages that we got in a short period of time, from the time that the executive order came out from the governor to when we put out our public statement.
That's awesome. All right, we're about to wrap things up. Is there anything else you think people need to know before we sign off here?
Yeah, the last thing that I would like to say is that police officers in general are really for the Second Amendment. They really are pro Second Amendment, because you have to look at it this way. Yes, police officers are here to enforce the law, but most police officers aren't going to do this job forever. I'm in a department where I have a 20-year retirement. So I'm going to retire at, just around 40 years old. And then for the rest of my life, which is hopefully a long time, I'm not going to be a certified police officer, but I still want to carry a firearm. That's how most police officers think, is that they want this right. They want to be protected by the Second Amendment when they are not a police officer, when they are a different state, when they retire, or they are not in law enforcement anymore. And that is really how most police officers see the Second Amendment. Most police officers do not see the Second Amendment as a tool to use against the citizens, but as something to protect, as important for our constitutional rights.
100%. How can people find you? Tell them about your law newsletter.
Yeah, so you can find me just about anywhere over at Police Law News. I'm over at TikTok, Instagram, Facebook. I write a YouTube. I write a newsletter on Substack called Police Law Newsletter, and you can find me there.
Awesome. Thank you for your time, sir. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right, be safe.